Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
You're listening to the man who's screaming from the rooftops for the big banks to help out America's small businesses, the Robin Hood of small business.
Now, don't be sore at the banks. Hell, we fired our CEO and he barely got out with $50 million.
That poor man, is he okay?
Well, as okay as you can be in the north of France.
Jim Blasingame, the Small Business Advocate.
Welcome back, 34 after the hour. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for hanging out with me. Always a pleasure. Continue to be with you. We're still having a great visit with our good friend John Bradberry, the author of 6 Secrets to Startup Success. ReadyFounder.com is his website. John, one of the things I know you want to talk about today is decision-making, and we're going to do that this segment. One of my mentors once told me, make lots of decisions. He said, if you know what you're doing, and you do the proper due diligence, etc., you do the proper homework, etc., but if you do that and you make lots of decisions, you'll make most of them correctly, but not all of them, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well, I think that's correct, especially if you're making decisions consciously and you're attempting to improve the way you make decisions over time. It's like anything.
Instead of reacting.
Right. The more you practice it, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you're making bad decisions or if you have a bad process and you do it all the time, you just perpetuate that bad process.
Right.
So part of what I wanted to talk today about is, working with clients who are, a business is, if nothing else, a constant stream of decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I know the best entrepreneurs make lots of good decisions. They make frequent good decisions. And so, but there's a decision has an anatomy to it. There's a structure to a typical decision. And what I find is too often founders who are, kind of shot out of the cannon, they have a great idea, they're getting pieces of the decision mixed up, if that makes sense. And that causes a lot of conflict as well when you're working in teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I often find is, what's the structure of a decision? Well, it starts with what are you trying to accomplish? What's your goal? Then it moves to what are my options? Okay? So I want to save money on gas. I have a big, Ford truck. I'm driving 50 miles into work every day, and I want to save money on gas. So I decide I'm going to buy a smaller car.
Mm-hmm.
And I decide, well, this Honda people tell me about, this Honda Accord looks nice. I'm going to go to go talk to the salesman about that. And then there's a Ford that's a small, Ford Focus or something that is my option B. And what tends to happen is people get caught up in those two options.
Analysis paralysis.
And it's analysis paralysis, or in a team, one person plants their feet with option A and the other plants their feet with option B. Suddenly you're polarized and the whole discussion is about which one's better. Well, that's the wrong question. If you really get clear about why you're making the decision, what you want to achieve, and then be creative and open-minded about options. It doesn't have to take long, but really think, to use a cliche, out of the box in terms of what your options are. What if there's a new rail line that runs from my suburb into the city, and if I decide I want to start taking that, I'll save 90% of my fuel costs.
Mm-hmm.
That opens up a completely different set of choices in terms of the car. What kind of vehicle?
So when you're making decisions, you're saying don't just head down the classic path of decision making that you have had. Sort of slow down, look around, make up, and consider many more options.
Spend time, and I'd say protect the space or the time in your decision where you're generating new options, where you're asking for new ideas. You can eliminate them quickly if you don't think they're good ideas. But what I find too often is that, and it's a cognitive bias we have.
But some people,
beings.
the problem, John, and one thing you have to guard against is getting so many balls in the air. Some people have a hard time ruling things out.
Well, and that's part of this has to do with what's the nature of the decision. How important is this business?
Yeah. And I'll tell you something else, John. If you have a hard time ruling things out, you probably don't need to be a business owner. Am I right?
You've got to be action oriented.
Yeah.
And make things happen.
At some point in time, you got to make a decision, and that's really important, folks. If you can't make decisions, you're probably not going to be a good business owner. John, I got to wrap it up. Thanks for being here. Good job today, as always.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it, and look forward to next time.
ReadyFounder.com is his website. 6 Secrets to Startup Success is his book. John Bradberry. We'll be back another day. I'll be back after these messages. I'm Jim Blasingame. Stay with me.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.